Today, after 4 grueling days on the stand.
She might have a lawsuit too.
Singer Don Richard testifies that Sean Diddy Combs hit Cassie Ventura with a skillet full of eggs.
You got to go back to the drugs and the alcohol, man. The drugs and the alcohol, man. And
what does it take to silence a courtroom? Don Richard's statement concerning Cassie's alleged assault by Diddy left everyone dumbfounded. Get ready for the shocking revelations that drew the curtain back on an unfathomable reality.
Diddy's ex wrapped up her testimony today after 4 grueling days on the stand. The defense hit her hard during cross-examination, asking her about a stint in rehab for PTSD, a rape allegation, and asking her to read explicit text messages from over the past 15 years.
Richard accused Combs of sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and a hostile work environment by being exposed to sex trafficking and sex acts. She also alleged that she was a victim of false imprisonment. In her suit, Richard stated she was seeking compensatory and punitive damages, as well as other costs for post-traumatic stress, anxiety, and emotional suffering, and financial losses she suffered as a result of Combs' alleged behavior. Combs has denied her allegations. His lawyer told E! News in September, Mr. Combs is shocked and disappointed by this lawsuit. Richard's testimony in Combs' ongoing trial comes 8 months after she accused the rapper in a lawsuit of subjecting her to years of inhumane working conditions, which included groping, assault, and false imprisonment. The lawsuit, filed in September, obtained by E! News, stated, Mr. Combs frequently held meetings with Ms. Richard wearing only his underwear, despite Ms. Richard's protests and repeated requests for him to put on clothing. In her filing, the 41-year-old also alleged that Combs ordered her to strip down to her underwear, made demeaning remarks about her body, and entered her dressing room unannounced while she was unclothed, and touched her without her permission under the guise of showing the stylist what.
Don Richard's testimony hit the courtroom like a lightning bolt. A former member of Danity Kane, the female group created under Diddy's management, Dawn wasn't only a prior partner. She had a close-up view of how things operated in Diddy's world. That made her evidence one of the most important portions of the trial's opening week. People anticipated her to provide a few ideas, but the things she revealed utterly shook the gathering. What did she say regarding Cassie's alleged abuse that made the entire courtroom become silent? Dawn's connection to Diddy and Cassie wasn't only through work, it was extremely personal. As a member of Danity Kane, she worked directly with Diddy and saw him and the people surrounding him virtually every day. Cassie, of course, was his lifelong girlfriend, and from the outside, their relationship appeared spectacular. But Dawn's evidence reveals a much darker aspect of what truly happened behind closed doors. Her statements added weight to the suspicions of abuse that had plagued Diddy and Cassie for years. When it was Dawn's turn to speak, the energy in the room altered. She detailed moments when she allegedly saw Diddy's furious outbursts, which made everyone around him feel uneasy and nervous. According to her, these outbursts were typically focused at Cassie, who seemed to suffer the most. Dawn made it apparent that she wasn't just repeating gossip. She had personally seen these things happen. She had watched it all herself. She recounted in detail about one occasion that left the courtroom speechless. Without stating anything exactly, she recalled a disagreement when Diddy apparently yelled at Cassie so aggressively that her physical reaction demonstrated how much agony it caused. But it wasn't just the yelling, it was his menacing tone and how he reportedly twisted every scenario to make Cassie feel like she had no control. For Dawn, that moment lingered in her memory. She stated it was only one of many situations when Cassie seemed trapped under Diddy's influence. What made Dawn's comments even more impactful was how she expressed them. Her voice apparently conveyed both wrath and despair, as if she had been holding this in for years. Legal experts remarked that this kind of direct account can be highly persuasive in a trial. It's one thing to hear generic charges, but it's completely different to hear a witness explain exact instances they lived through. For the jury, stories like this bring the claims to life in a way that's hard to ignore. Diddy's reaction to her testimony was equally telling. As Dawn spoke, reporters reported his body language changed. He looked guarded, like he hadn't expected her to be so honest. He shuffled in his seat, his face went strained, and he leaned in to whisper to his legal team. He didn't interrupt, but it was evident he didn't like what she was saying. And it made sense why her testimony wasn't just harming his public image, it was adding substantial credibility to Cassie's charges. But the moment that actually stung the hardest, both for the jury and for anyone following the case, was when Dawn reportedly claimed that she believed Cassie spent much of her time just trying to survive. Those 5 words hit like a punch, summarizing years of alleged emotional and physical abuse in one terrible syllable. This wasn't just about debates or control. It was about a woman who had seemingly lived in continual fear and didn't know how to leave. Dawn's testimony wasn't just another story. It was a critical turning point in the trial. It caused a ripple effect that will certainly impact how the jury sees Diddy moving forward. Her account fit into the bigger tale the prosecution was creating, and it gave the case even more strength, something the defense would now have a hard time fighting against. As the first week of the trial drew to an end, Dawn's remarks still remained in the air. They weren't just recollections. They were a spotlight shining on a situation that had gone buried for far too long, and with more persons expected to testify in the coming days, including others close to Cassie and Diddy, the courtroom is ready for even more dramatic discoveries. What's next for this trial? Only time will tell. But for now, Dawn's impassioned testimony has set the tone for what may become a historic case in the world of celebrity justice.
If she witnessed, and she's saying that she witnessed a gangbang, which actually we know it as called a train. And she worked on the album, The Train to Paris. And like I heard one of the YouTube, it could be Tistel, say that we didn't know what the train to Paris meant. But now we know that the train to Paris was a train in Scotland. It wasn't a train in Paris, it was a train in Scotland. Every time I have a witness doing something is when 2 guys and 2 girls will go in the room. And that was just regular. And however they did it, whatever they did, that was their business. But he gotten bold enough, whereas that he would do that in front of Dawn and other people at a poolside in Scotland. You sure it was Scotland, man?
Danity Kane alum Don Richard, who began working with Sean Diddy Combs while competing on his show Making the Band in 2004, took the stand after Cassie wrapped her testimony May 16th. Richard joined Combs' group Diddy Dirty Money after Danity Kane disbanded. While on the stand, she told jurors that she saw Combs hit Ventura with a skillet full of eggs at his Los Angeles home in 2009. Richard testified per NBC News. He came downstairs asking where his phone was, and he threw her to the ground. He attempted to kick her. She fell to the ground and went into the fetal position, literally trying to hide her head. In addition to striking Ventura with the skillet, Richard said Combs put his arm around the singer's neck and took her upstairs before she heard glass breaking. Richard added, "I was scared for her."
The courtroom drama reached a new level when a bombshell piece of evidence was introduced, an audio clip starring Cassie. In the clip, she's apparently heard threatening a Diddy associate who supposedly had film of a furious argument. As the ICMY recording aired, the mood in the courtroom changed instantaneously. What may be on the tape that made even the jurors noticeably shaken? This audio was a crucial turning point in the trial. It didn't simply illustrate more of the poisonous nature of Cassie and Diddy's relationship. It highlighted the emotional maelstrom each appeared caught in. As the recording played, everyone in the room could hear the real anguish in Cassie's voice. She sounded desperate, enraged, and overwhelmed. Legal experts interpreted her statements as the voice of someone thoroughly worn down by years of struggle and pain. Her threats didn't sound planned. They sounded like the breaking point of someone who had experienced too much. Here's what we know. Cassie's voice is heard chatting to a man thought to be a close acquaintance of Diddy. This man supposedly possessed video proof of a violent confrontation between Cassie and Diddy. In the recording, Cassie's voice wavers between fury and determination as she demands answers and makes threats to protect herself. The recording showed how far the harm ran, not just in their personal relationship, but among the people who worked with Diddy too. That emotional upheaval, especially the dread of being revealed, made it impossible for jurors and onlookers to look away. Why would Cassie reach such a desperate point, threatening someone connected to Diddy? Experts observing the trial noted that this kind of behavior is prevalent in abusive relationships. Years of deception, mental instability, and feeling alienated can drive someone over the edge. To outsiders, these times could seem unreasonable. But for individuals imprisoned in violent settings, these are often merely indicators of someone eventually breaking down. One legal analyst said the recording adds further layers to the story. It didn't only support the idea of an abusive relationship. It demonstrated that Cassie had lived in a perpetual fight-or-flight condition. Her emotional reactions become more strong over time. This wasn't just about one outburst. It was about the years of control, misery, and terror underlying it. You could hear it in her voice. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. For the jury, this tape made things more confusing. It increased to the seriousness of the charges against Diddy. At the same time, it forced them to grasp where Cassie was emotionally. Was the tape proof of her suffering? Maybe not by itself, but when you connect it to Dawn Richards' testimony and other testimonies, it provides a better picture of a highly poisonous relationship. Still, the recording generated additional doubts. Diddy's legal team is expected to claim that Cassie's emotional outburst diminishes her credibility. They might try to present her as unstable, aiming to make the jury disbelieve her entire tale. That tactic is frequent in high-profile defense cases, and it's probable they won't stop at just this tape. Rumors claim they'll probe into Cassie's mental health and past to assault her credibility even further. But here's the real issue. This tape wasn't simply one angry moment. It was about everything that led to it. For years, Diddy was considered as untouchable in the music industry. Cassie, on the other hand, was just known as his quiet girlfriend, someone who rarely spoke up in public. This recording shattered that picture. The courtroom didn't just hear Cassie's anger. They heard a woman battling to take back control in a relationship where she had absolutely none. What happens next could change everything. Will the defense double down on trying to discredit Cassie? Or will new witnesses, recordings, or evidence dig further into the truth of their relationship? One thing is certain. The jury is no longer just watching a trial. They're seeing a horrific story of power, control, and emotional destruction. And the next move might change everything.
Bring up into the lawsuit that Diddy stopped the way that she was working and how she could work by the fact that he would change, like you just said. What she would do, bro, he would turn off her mic and don't let her sing songs or don't let her do certain things, a part of the band, when he do her sexual advancements. I don't know what to say about that, brother. All I can say is that, you know, all of it sounds like using his power. He's using his power to get at people that works for him. And when you do that, when they bring you to court, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna lose if they can prove it.
One text message, Cassie writes, "I'm lost without you."
We know now that she called herself Cece for Cassie Combs. We know now that she wanted to have a child with him.
Jurors also heard an audio recording where Cassie could be heard threatening to kill a Diddy associate who had video of one of her freak-offs with Diddy.
The jurors were shocked. I saw the eyebrows raised.
Cassie was asked about receiving a FaceTime from her now husband
Right.
while she was having sex with Diddy.
I think they're trying to use what they can, again, to discredit.
The defense team tried to shift focus onto Cassie's past, hoping it would discredit her. At first, it seemed like a premeditated action. They brought up her stint in rehab, her PTSD, and a former rape claim, seeking to show she was emotionally unstable and unpredictable. The objective was to weaken her evidence by depicting her as someone who couldn't be trusted. But instead of undermining her credibility, this technique provided new complexity to her story, maybe even more than the defense expected. By exposing her past pain, they unwittingly revealed how someone like Diddy could exploit those vulnerabilities. Rather than making her look unstable, it demonstrated how emotionally weak she was and how that made it easier for Diddy to control her. One of the significant moments in court was the disclosure of intimate text exchanges between Cassie and Diddy. In one of them, she wrote, "I'm lost without you." The defense used this to show she was emotionally dependent, trying to argue their relationship, though rocky, was reciprocal and voluntary. But trauma experts pointed out that this form of emotional bond is quite frequent among abuse survivors. It doesn't mean they weren't suffering. It suggests they were tricked into thinking they had no other choice. Cassie's texts were read aloud in court, with allegations from the defense that her emotional state made her testimony questionable. This kind of technique is regularly used to undermine the credibility of abuse victims, especially when a strong character is on trial. The The method entails pointing out inconsistencies, using personal history, and raising just enough doubt to sway the jury. But in Cassie's case, this technique may have backfired. Instead of diminishing her story, it added emotional weight to it. It let the jurors understand her as someone who had actually suffered, someone who was struggling to survive in a highly exploitative relationship. By forcing Cassie to relive those unpleasant memories, the defense may have unwittingly focused more attention to the emotional influence Diddy allegedly maintained over her. Given the significant power disparity in their relationship, Cassie's background now looks more like a result of that dynamic than a reason to distrust her. Many trial watchers felt that these admissions regarding Cassie's mental health and past added legitimacy to her charges. Her PTSD and time in recovery were no longer indicators of weakness. They were evidence of the toll that being with Diddy may have inflicted on her. Instead of raising skepticism, this line of questioning created new questions. How much of Cassie's emotional distress was caused by the relationship itself? The defense undoubtedly tried to divert from earlier embarrassing testimony. But, by focusing on Cassie's past, they unwittingly produced a broader picture of her struggle and Diddy's claimed control. This alteration in courtroom tone is now affecting how the jury sees the entire case. It's no longer simply about text messages or one person's word. It's about long-term patterns of conduct, significant power disparities, and the emotional wounds left behind. And with more witnesses coming forward, including members of Danity Kane and people from Diddy's personal circle, the narrative is just getting more tangled. Whether they meant to or not, the defense's attempt to undermine Cassie may have just bolstered her case. As the trial progresses, each new witness has the capacity to peel back another layer of this already combustible case.
We're all going to take a disgusting trip to his seedy, awful world. You know, the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual.
The facts are the facts, the texts are the texts, and I think that the evidence will be clear.
That Ventura had a choice and that she chose to participate in those sexual encounters.
Where she is entertaining other people in the bedroom. He enjoyed having the freak-offs.
She's being asked specifically about the drug use.
She is clearly excited about.
Aubrey O'Day is the next person everyone's watching in this dramatic trial. A former member of Danity Kane, she's standing forward to provide her story of life under Diddy's management. What she knows, what she saw, these are the questions everyone is anxious to hear answered when she takes the stand. And she's not alone. Former employees, some who were close to Diddy both professionally and personally, are also ready to speak. Each new witness contributes another piece to this puzzle, and it's growing harder and harder to look away. The importance of several witnesses can't be understated. Dawn. Richard's testimony already stunned the courtroom. Her testimony of Cassie's alleged mistreatment made the jury take a second look at Diddy's carefully protected image. Now, with Aubrey O'Day likely to testify, the same themes of control and emotional abuse could come into even clearer focus. Aubrey gives a new perspective. She worked closely with Diddy during the height of Danity Kane's career. She's witnessed what transpired behind closed doors, and she's never been hesitant in criticizing Diddy's rigorous and high-pressure leadership style. She hasn't openly accused him of abuse in the past, but her willingness to come out has people wondering what she'll divulge now. If her narrative supports what Cassie and Dawn have previously said, it could make it more tougher for the defense to maintain that these are isolated instances. That's the power of several testimony. They establish a chain of stories, individual pieces that join to show a clear, repeating pattern. Dawn, for example, highlighted occasions where Cassie seemed disturbed and stressed after being on the receiving end of Diddy's purported rants. She stressed how dominating and unhealthy the relationship felt from the outside. That alone was powerful. Now, with Aubrey testifying next, the jury could begin to perceive this not as one incident, but as part of something greater. And if that pattern is established, it's much tougher to say these were merely misunderstandings or one-time mistakes. Even more remarkable is the expected testimony from Diddy's former employees. These weren't just folks in his social circle. They